So it's that time of the week again. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at my high yield stock tracker sheet. Let's get that updated with the distributions along with some purchases that I did make this week. And we'll also take a look at the YieldMax website to see if we can find out what is changed and why we're seeing more of this upward movement following the underlying than we used to, as we seem to be capturing more of that upside of that price appreciation than before. Hello, my friends, this is Legend. So we're going to take a look at my spreadsheet. We're going to update that, get those distributions entered in, and enter in those purchases, find out what my new real price per share is, as I was able to purchase some CONY and WDTE this week, which is going to help lower my real price per share, and that only works in my favor. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the YieldMax website, as they did do an update to it. And there is a statement at the beginning. I think that might help us to understand some of the changes that we're seeing. And those changes just being that we're seeing more capture of that price appreciation than we used to, as we used to seem to be getting capped out if the underlying moved up too quickly. But that does not seem to be the case as of late with these high yield YieldMax ETFs. So let's go over and check out the website and let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here we are on the YieldMax website, and you can see they have made an update to it, and it's been this way for a little while, okay? But I just wanted to point out a couple little things. And one of the reasons why I think we're seeing more of the price appreciation on these high yield ETFs with YieldMax than we used to see, because we always seem to be getting capped out if the underlying, say AMDY, had a huge pop up, and we would not see that same movement up on AMDY. And the same goes with MSTY and MR along with the others. So for this example, we're going to take a look at MSTY. And you can see they've got a nice site here, and they don't have all those movements on that front page, as that was very distracting, and they've removed that, and I think that was a good change. Now the site is very clean. We've got some pop-ups along the top here that you can see. And of course, you can scroll through these, right? And you can go straight to the fund from those pop-ups. But as always, you can do the little drop down right here, and it's much cleaner, right? You got little buttons that you can click for each of those tickers. Go to that ticker and get some detailed information of each one. So for this example, let's just take a look at MSTY. All right, so MSTY right here, we click it and we go straight to that page for MSTY. Now let me first start off with, this is my opinion of why I think we're seeing more participation in the price appreciation of the underlying than we used to. And I think this paragraph right here is the reason. And this statement here is from what I've seen on just about all of those ETFs. And let's just take a look at this, and you can see it states that the YieldMax MSTR option income strategy ETF MSTY is an actively managed ETF designed to generate weekly income by selling call spreads on the strategy or MSTR, right? And I think right there, that is the difference. They are now selling call spreads versus, from what I understood, they were only selling calls. So when you sell a call, you are agreeing to sell your shares at a given price. And if it reaches that price, you're maxed out. No matter if the stock keeps on going, you do not earn any more money. You have major money off the premium, and you would have to sell those shares at that strike. But if you're selling call spreads, now it's a spread, right? So now you're buying a call further out in price, and on that same expiration date, you're selling a call closer to the stock price. And what that does is that helps you to be able to capture more of that upside movement. But you would get capped out on that sold call that you have, but the call that you bought, that one would increase. So that helps you to actually be able to capture some of that price movement up. You're not just selling that call, and once it reaches that strike, you're capped out. But those call spreads, you have that bought call that you have, and that one keeps increasing as the price continues to move up. So that helps you to be able to capture more of that move up on the price of the stock. And I think that's why we're starting to see a bit more participation in these YieldMax ETFs on the price appreciation than we used to. And as you can see, the next sentence right here, it says, by writing call spreads, MSTY seeks to systematically harvest option premium from MSTR's volatility, but then striving to turn it into a weekly income stream while still maintaining participation in MSTR's share price appreciation. And that is the other side of that spread. We know all about selling the call side, but the buying the call side of that spread is how they're actually able to maintain and participate in MSTR's share price appreciation. And I think that is how we're able to capture more of that movement than we used to. Now, of course, all of that again is my opinion of why we're starting to see more of a closer movement up when the underlying moves up. It seems that the YieldMax ETF is moving up along with it. And just for the example, we can look right here on AMD. You can see this thing has just been moving on up. I mean, that's a nice move up. And we're talking about a move up from around something like $200 to now $400. And if we take a look at AMDY, you can see we have also been moving up on AMDY. And this one has moved something around that $30 up to $53 to $56. So we're seeing a nice move up as the underlying is moving up. And we've seen that before. But the parts that we have not seen is whenever we start zooming in here and we take a look at this area right here. And you can see on 5/5 versus 5/6, so that's May 5th versus May 6th, look at this jump on this candle. Now, we would not see anything like that on the YieldMax ETFs. The only kind of jump you would ever see is a jump from this point down here if it fell. We could possibly see a fall down that much, but we would never see anything move from a $45 price up to a $50 price overnight. We would not see that. Now, we would see this move up, say from this 50 up to 52. We would see it, but where would that candle be? That candle would probably be closer to about right here, right? It would actually start from about right here and move up roughly that same percentage as it moved up right here, as long as it didn't go above, say, about 4% or so. We would never see AMDY or any of these high yield ETFs move up more than roughly about 4 to 5%. And that was a good move, right? We would never see anything like this, and that's almost a 10% move on the price. And that's off of AMD, which is the YieldMax high yield ETF. And I believe, in my opinion, selling these spreads is the reason why we're seeing some of these bigger moves on the upside and not necessarily getting capped out. But that's my opinion. Throw your ideas in the comments. Would love to hear them. So now let's go ahead and get my spreadsheet updated and find out what my new real price per share is for each of those, along with what those distributions are for this week. But before we do that, if you don't mind, hit that like button, as it does help that algorithm out and gets this out to other people, and it would be much appreciated. All right, so here we are on my spreadsheet. This is my high yield ETF spreadsheet, and this one is available to all of my Discord members, and the ones who have used it. The feedback that I have received is definitely positive because it's helping them to be able to see what their real price per share is, to understand where they currently are in each of their high yield ETF positions. Because if you're not tracking that, then you really have no idea where you really sit. The only thing you can see is what's shown on your broker app, and it does not take into account those distributions. At least my broker app does not. And to me, you really need to calculate that in so that you can really understand where you sit for each of these positions. So if you would like a copy of this spreadsheet, come on over, join the Discord. That link will be in the pinned comments and the descriptions below. But let's just go ahead and get started. And let's start right off with CONY. So to get to CONY, I hover over that ticker. It pops up with the link. And this is exactly the way your sheet would be after entering in your distributions and entering in the tickers you own. Not just the ones I own, but the ones you own. It will also be automatically linked, so it just makes it nice, simple, and easy. So we click it to go straight to that CONY individual sheet, just like that, and here we are. So to help speed this up a little bit, I've already entered in the distributions for each of those ETFs, but I have not entered in the number of shares, as that is what will adjust that real price per share. So I'll do that on the video here, but I've already typed in the actual amount just to help speed things along. But before we enter in the distribution for CONY, I did make a purchase, so let's enter in those purchases first, because that could adjust the number of shares that I get to count for that distribution. So I made two purchases on CONY. One of them I made Sunday night, and the other one I made during the trading day of Monday. So the first purchase was on 5/17. I made that purchase at $25.60 per share, and I purchased 10 shares. That alone is going to be able to reduce that real price per share because I did purchase those shares under that real price per share. I bought them at $25.60. My real price per share being $36.61 is definitely going to lower that real price per share, which is only going to help me get it just that much closer to the current price of CONY. So those 10 shares right there is going to lower that real price per share of $36.61 down to $36.02. But now I did make a second purchase on 5/18, and for that one, I purchased them at $25 even. I purchased a total of 10 more shares, and that also is going to lower that real price per share of $36.02 down to $35.45. So that alone dropped it down just over $1 per share on my real price per share. And I haven't even entered in the distributions yet. So that's exciting. Now for these distributions, I enter in that X date because that is an important date. I have to own those shares before this date, and that date is 5/21. So if I own or purchase shares before, not on, but before 5/21, then I can count those shares. My last purchase was on 5/18, so I can count all the shares that I currently have. And that total number of shares is 195 shares, so I get to enter in 195 instead of the 175 I had the week before, because I did purchase those 20 shares before the X date of 5/21. So that's going to also adjust that real price per share of $35.45 down to $35.11. So while CONY is down, I'm able to purchase some shares, start really bringing down my real price per share, and then once CONY starts moving back up, it's only going to help me because that will put my real price per share closer to that current price, and it has less travel to go before crossing over my real price per share and flipping me from being under on that position to being positive on that position. So if I were to sell all my shares of CONY at the current price, I would take a loss of about $2,000. Now, as we go through these, you will see I definitely am making more than I'm losing. All right, we're starting off with the loss, right? We're starting off with a minus $2,000. But you will see as we continue on, I am in the positive more than I'm in the negative. And we saw that also on the summary page. And just to take a quick glance at that, go back to that summary page, you can see if I scroll over here, all those that are green right here are the ones that I am up. The red ones I am down on. And you can see that I'm only down on YWMY and on CONY. Now, as we've already entered in those distributions and purchases, everything on this sheet is updated at that moment. So this position has already been updated to show that new real price per share of $35.11 with a total of that 195 shares, which also adjusts my total gains up here. So that has already increased just from the move on today and the distributions that I did earn. So let's continue on to PLTY. And on PLTY, we earned 35 cents this week. I have a total of 37 shares, and therefore, since this one is paid off, you'll see that the real price per share is minus $6.25 because it is under a zero value per share. Because I have earned more in distributions than I actually had invested into this position, which means I own these free and clear, and all distributions from this point on is free and clear money, not including taxes, of course. But those 37 shares is going to lower that real price per share from minus $6.25 down to minus $6.61. It is getting further and further away from that 0 point, which is a great thing to see. I love to get them paid off. So if I were to sell all my shares of PLTY, I would earn $1,500. And moving on, we have NVDY. Now NVDY, it earned 13 cents this week, and I have a total of 71 shares. And those 71 shares are going to help to lower my real price per share of $9.98 down to $9.84. And if I were to sell all of my shares in NVDY at the current price, I would make $278. For ULTY, I have a total of 56 shares, and we earned 39 cents this week. And that's going to lower my real price per share of $30.63 down to $30.23. And if I were to sell all my shares of ULTY at the current price, I would make $54. For MSTY, we earned 31 cents this week, and I have 95 shares. So that is also going to lower my real price per share. And as you can see, this one is too paid off. And you'll see that it's a minus $12.57 because I have earned back in distributions and premium here more than I had invested. So therefore, I own these shares free and clear. So I have 95 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share from minus $12.57 down to minus $12.88. Love it. And if I were to sell all my shares of MSTY at the current price, I would make $3,381. Lovely, right? Doesn't look like I'm at a loss here. Looks like I'm actually making money. Don't you agree? Moving on to SMCY. And SMCY, I actually purchased some shares, and we can enter those shares in right here. And I purchased those on 5/18. I paid $6.08 per share. And as you can see, I actually was able to get them below the current price of Friday's close because it did drop, and I was able to buy shares at 608 because it did drop below the 10 on the RSI 2. Now, how many shares did I purchase? Well, I got 25 shares at 608. And that's going to help lower that real price per share. Now, as you can see, it's already under. And just a week or two ago, the price of SMCY was actually under my real price per share, right? So it's actually red. Well, now it's green, but I'm also going to be lowering it even further, which is going to even offer more downside protection. So that's going to lower that real price per share of $6.24 down to $6.23. And yes, not much of a drop down, And it's mostly just because I did purchase them at 608. My real price per share was 624. But every move down only helps lower that real price per share. And of course, if SMCY dropped down to $4 and I purchased, then that would help lowering it even further. But by buying more shares under that real price per share, still helps to lower it. And it also increases the number of shares I have, which helps to bring in more distribution money into my account. And speaking of distributions, let's enter in the distributions. And that X date 5/21 means I have to own those shares before 5/21. And that purchase was on 5/18. So I can count all 350 shares. So instead of that 325 we had last week, we can now add on that extra 25 shares to take it to 350 shares. And at 10 cents per share, that's going to lower my real price per share of $6.23 down to $6.12. So I am moving even further away of that current price of SMCY, which only offers me even more downside protection. But if I were to sell all my shares of SMCY at the current price, I would make $156. For AMDY, we earned 97 cents this week. Awesome, right? What a great distribution. I have 164 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share of $22.05 down to $21.07. I am continually to move that real price per share down, even though AMDY itself has been moving up. So if I were to sell all my shares of AMDY at the current price, I would make $5,341. That is awesome. What a nice gain on that one. But like I said, I'm keeping with the same idea. I continually want to lower that real price per share because you never know what the actual ETF is going to move to. If it would happen to drop, I want to continue to drop my real price per share so that it provides me with that extra downside protection. And on YMAX, we have 9 cents per share, and I have 758 shares, and it's going to lower that real price per share of $6.14 down to $6.05. So if I were to sell all my shares at the current price of YMAX, I would make $1,813. For HUI, I did make a purchase this week on HUI, so let's go ahead and enter that purchase in to this sheet. And that was on 5/19. That purchase was at $26.90. How many shares did I purchase? I got 10 shares. So this purchase is going to indeed lower that real price per share right here from $39.44 down to $38.45. What a nice move down. Now, granted, the current price of HUI is still $26.50, right? But if this thing would move back up to $39, $40, I'm now going to be green. And that is definitely my goal, is to continue lowering it, especially while the stock itself is down, so that when it does turn around, it's got less room to move before it crosses over my line of my real price per share. But let's go ahead and enter that distribution because that's going to even lower it even more. And for HUI, we earned 36 cents. And I have now a total of 126 shares because the X date of that distribution is on 5/21 and I purchased them on 5/19. So I can account for all 126 shares for that distribution. So we'll enter in 126 here, and it's going to lower that real price per share even more. So now it's going to go from $38.45 down to $38.09. What a nice move this week. So if I were to sell all my shares of HUI, yes, I would still take a loss, but now it would only be a loss of minus $1,460. For QDTE, we earned 17 cents. I have 155 shares. And it's going to lower that real price per share of $20.33 down to $20.15. And if I were to sell all my shares at that current price, I would make $1,737. On IWMY, we earned 10 cents, and I have 551 shares. So that's going to lower that real price per share of $13.99 down to $13.88. And I would make a total of $3,109 if I sold all my shares of IWMY at the current price. QQQY, I have a total of 551 shares, and we earned 13 cents this week. That's going to lower that real price per share of $18.19 down to $18.05. And yes, you're looking and saying, wow, it's not moving much. But this is every single week. Every single week, if you're dropping 12, 13 cents every week, it adds up. And it keeps lowering your average down, even if the price of the stock is trading sideways or even moving down a little. But of course, you would want it to trade sideways or move up so that you can continue to move your average down to provide yourself with that downside protection. For WDTE, we earned 17 cents and I have 540 shares. It's going to lower that real price per share once again from $23.72 down to $23.54. So if I were to sell all my shares of WDTE at the current price, I would make $3,974. And just in case if I forgot to mention, going back to QQQY, if I were to sell all my shares at that current price, I would make $3,400. Next, we have JEPQ. And for JEPQ, this one pays out monthly and it's at the first of the month. So we do not have a distribution to show for this week. So my current real price per share of $8.53 still stands. And if I were to sell all my shares at the current price of JEPQ, which has been moving up, it is now $60.21. I would actually make $2,842. Last but not least is DIVO. And DIVO is a monthly payer and it pays out on the end of each month. And I do not have a distribution to show for this week. So that real price per share still stands at $44.37. So if I were to sell all my shares at the current price of DIVO, I would make $30.54. So now to see where we currently sit on all of our high yield ETFs, we can go right back to that summary page. And to get to that summary page, from any of these individual sheets, click this back to summary right here. Once you hover over it, you'll get that pop up and you just click it. That takes you right back to that summary page and you can see exactly where you stand in each of your high yield ETFs. This makes it nice, quick, and easy. One sheet to look at. You don't have to scroll through all the several sheets like you had to on my previous version. This one here is all being captured on this one summary page, and you can simply just scroll straight across, see where you currently sit in each of these, because if it's green, you don't even have to worry about it. At least that's how I handle it. But if it's red, then those are the ones you need to watch, because if it does give you an opportunity to help lower that real price per share, maybe you want to make that adjustment. But of course, that is up to each individual person. But at least all the information is right there in front of you. It is available for you to look at. And then you use that information to decide what you want to do for each of those. Now, if I were to sell out of every single one of these high yield ETFs, and that's all 15 of these high yield ETFs, right? I have a total of 15. So if I sold every one of them at that current market price, which is currently the close of Friday's price, okay? And that is this kind of tan cell right here. That shows you that market price. If I were to sell every single one of these at that market price, and I was completely out of the high yield ETFs, I would clear $24,358. And that would be above what I actually had invested, right? This is what I would make. And that would only be true if I sold out of every single one of these high yield ETFs. I would make $24,358. So for all the people who told me I'm going to lose it all, I beg to differ. This is a long-term thing for me. This is not a quick, easy in and out to make the money. For me, this is more of a long-term thing because my goal is to get each one of these paid off so that all of the money coming in is all free and clear because I now own the shares outright, right? Because they would have been paid for through the distributions. And that's what this sheet helps you to see. It puts it all right there for you, gives you all the information for you to make your own decisions of what you need to do for each of your high yield ETFs. So if you don't have a way, or if you're not tracking your real price per share, come on over, join the Discord so that you can get a link to get a copy of this sheet so you can start tracking your own high yield ETFs to find out what your real price per share is. So click that link down in the description and then the pinned comments below so you can join, get your sheet, and let me know where you currently sit in some of your positions. I would love to hear. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock play. But until next time, Legend out.